The Blessed Mother surprised me at Medjugorje, or maybe better said, she gifted me with seeing joy, piety, and peace there. I received my own visions, maybe you could say. If you're not familiar with the name Medjugorje, it is a little town in Bosnia Herzegovina where numerous appearances of the Blessed Mother have occurred, beginning with appearances to 6 young teens back in 1981. Reports of the visions are ongoing, and in the case of one of the visionaries, encounters with Mary continue every day. For another, it's a monthly encounter. For another, it comes on an annual basis. The phenomenon of these apparitions is not without controversy. Some are skeptical indeed, some are more than skeptical. In fact, in the early days of the appearances back in the 80s, even the local Catholic bishop was not supportive of the claims and discouraged travel to Medjugorje to visit the site. Others are convinced of the claims of the visionaries who, over 40 years on, continue to relate how they encountered Mary as young teens, as well as, for some, as I say, continue to have mystical encounters with her to this very day. Now, earlier this year, I had the opportunity to travel to Medjugorje with a group of about 20 pilgrims. I went on the trip without preconceptions and also not intending to come away with any definitive assessment of the apparitions. You know, how could I know? But I did go. And frankly, I went because I love to travel. We flew from Chicago and ultimately arrived in Dubrovnik by way of Berlin, and such far-off places and filled with, not mystery, at least filled with being lands far from my usual landscape. But truly, and more importantly, I went because I try to have my Catholic faith animate how I live. If Mary has appeared and is continuing to appear, well, who wouldn't want to go and see? I wanted to see what I could see. I went trusting in others who have been to Medjugorje numerous times and whose opinions I value. I would be cognizant of the naysayers and the skeptics, but I wanted to see for myself. Now, making this pilgrimage, I was joining the 40 million other people who have visited Medjugorje since 1981. And I was walking alongside the 1.5 million priests who have gone there over the years. The messages of Mary given to the 6 visionaries, as the recipients of the messages are called visionaries, they've been collected and reviewed and assessed. The messages are voluminous, and the Vatican has done some very helpful work in this cataloging. In fact, in 2024, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, the DDF, promulgated a document with Pope Francis' approval that did this work of taking a bird's eye view of the body of the messages, as voluminous as they are. The title of the document is The Queen of Peace, a note about the spiritual experience connected with Medjugorje. And to cut to the chase on that document, the DDF approves of Medjugorje as a pilgrimage site because of the fruits seen in so many people who have visited there. The fruits such as the numerous conversions, the returns to the faith, the awakening of vocations, and the simple experience of the practice of the faith. Well, the millions have been at Medjugorje. All of this argues in favor of not discouraging pilgrimages. Now, as for the messages themselves, the Vatican reserves judgment. It's being cautious, appropriately. For those messages that are consistent with the faith as we have known it down the ages, then we accept the statements as confirming what we've always believed. However, in the end, for as long as these appearances and messages are continuing, the visions will continue to be called alleged visions, according to the Vatican. The story is still being written, and there's no need to opine definitively one way or the other on what the visionaries have seen. If the fruits of this pilgrimage site are abundant in the meantime, well then yes, let the people come. And with that qualification understood, what is Our Lady, known as Gospa, the Croatian word for lady or Our Lady? What is she saying in these revelations? Well, here's a quick overview of a small fraction of the revelations listed in the Vatican's Queen of Peace document. The Gospa calls herself Mother and Queen of Peace. Peace is achieved through prayer and spread through missionary efforts. Our Lady says, quote, "Dear children, I come to you and introduced myself as the Queen of Peace because my Son sent me. I desire, dear children, to help you so that peace may come," unquote. That's a statement drawn from the year 2012. In 1982, we heard Mary saying, quote, "You err when you look to the future thinking only of wars, punishment, and evil. If you're always thinking of evil, you're already putting yourself on the road to meet it. For the Christian, there's only one attitude toward the future, the hope of salvation. Your task is to accept God's peace, to live it, and to spread it," end quote. Many clear calls come to us from Mary to tell us to turn to God, and implicitly, therefore, not to turn to herself. In 1985, she said, quote, "Dear children, today I call upon you to surrender entirely to God. Give everything you do and everything you possess over to God so that he may reign in your life as King of everything," unquote. In 1999, one revelation said, quote, "Behold, for this I am with you, to teach you and bring you closer to the love of God," unquote. In 1988, she said, quote, "In a special way, my children, I would like to bring you closer to the heart of Jesus. Therefore, my children, today I call you to prayer, addressed to my dear Son, Jesus, that all your hearts may be his," end quote. The Vatican document sees the message as announcing a constant call to abandon a worldly lifestyle and to an excessive attachment to worldly goods, in the words of that Vatican document. This is what makes true peace possible. Mary's messages state that prayer is fundamental and that the Mass is the central and highest form of prayer. The spirituality of Medjugorje is not individualistic. No, it is experienced in communal events such as the pilgrimages, the prayer meetings, as well as Mass. Also, fasting with prayer is encouraged in the messages. From our lives of prayer and the spirituality of Medjugorje, we will encounter joy and celebration. Also, we will find pressing calls to personal witness. These are calls to give witness to faith and love in one's life. In fact, Mary says, we can summarize the missionary message of Medjugorje in that. Now, apart from these encouraging messages, the revelations reported by the visionaries are also on occasion words that can be seen, well, as on the edge of threatening. For example, there's a 1982 message that says, quote, "I have come to call the world to conversion for the last time. Later I will no longer appear on earth. These are my final appearances," end quote. Also, the Vatican document questions whether a few of the expressions appear to seek to manage the local parish and supersede the ordinary parish structures of our church. Overall, however, the assessment of the content of the revelations is positive. The Vatican statement reminds us that these are words that are recorded, words that the Vatican describes as alleged, we remember, and these are words coming to us interpreted through the medium of the individual human beings, the visionaries. All of us are flawed in our own ways, and it may be that the messages that sound off or discordant from what we expect from Our Lady are explained by the limitations inherent in any human witness. Due to the overall assessment of the Medjugorje phenomenon, and in particular the fruits of the faith by those who visit, seeing the great fervor, the conversions, the prayer, the robust worship, the many vocations, the Vatican grants its nihil obstat. That is, in paragraph 38 of the Vatican's Queen of Peace document, the Vatican has granted a formal nihil obstat, nothing stands in the way, is the Latin. The nihil obstat is granted with respect to the spiritual and pastoral fruits associated with Medjugorje. This judgment, the document says, recognizes that many positive fruits of grace, conversion, confession, renewed faith, vocations, Eucharistic devotion, are objectively present and verifiable. On that basis, the Church authorizes and encourages pastoral activity, including official pilgrimages, public devotion, liturgical and sacramental life in Medjugorje. This authorization is not provisional tolerance, but a positive ecclesial judgment about what is happening there pastorally. In other words, Section 38 of the Vatican Statement makes clear that the Church is not merely allowing Medjugorje as a neutral site, but is actively recognizing its pastoral value because of its fruits. Over the document, to quote it, says, quote, evaluating the abundant and widespread fruits which are so beautiful and positive does not imply that the alleged supernatural events are declared as authentic. Instead, it only highlights that the Holy Spirit is acting fruitfully for the good of the faithful in the midst of the spiritual phenomenon of Medjugorje. For this reason, all are invited to appreciate and share the pastoral value of this spiritual proposal. Moreover, the positive assessment that most of the messages of Medjugorje are edifying does not imply a declaration that they have a direct supernatural origin. Consequently, when referring to messages from Our Lady, one should always bear in mind that they are, quote, alleged messages, unquote. In any case, may the people who go to Medjugorje be strongly advised that pilgrimages are not to be made solely to meet with the alleged visionaries, but to have an encounter with Mary, the Queen of Peace, and the faithful to her love for her Son, to encounter Christ and listen to him through meditation on the Word, by participation in the Eucharist and in Eucharistic adoration, as happens in so many shrines spread all over the world, in which the Virgin Mary is venerated with the most varied titles, period, unquote, from that Vatican statement. I can summarize my experience of my pilgrimage by saying that I've rarely seen hundreds of people standing in line for confession. I've never seen priests hearing the confessions, sitting in confessionals marked English or Spanish, French, Italian, Croatian, Arabic, Hungarian, Korean, German, or it seems many, many more of the languages Our Lady's people speak. I've rarely seen a midday mass in English in a large church crammed with people, standing room only, where day after day so many people were on hand and packed together in the pews and in the aisles that there was no ability for the people to process forward for communion. Instead, the priests and the deacons assisting went out to the people and waded into their midst to distribute the Eucharist. I've never seen an outdoor mass night after night with I don't know how many thousand people in attendance, several thousand at least, all attending a mass in Croatian. They didn't all speak Croatian. It is remarkable to be in a place where on a normal weekday night at 6 p.m., thousands, not speaking that local language in which the Mass is offered, are nevertheless in attendance. Apart from the liturgies, never have I seen so many people experiencing real pain, climbing an entirely 100% rock-filled ascent, climbing the apparition hill to be at the top, the place where the first apparitions occurred. Never have I seen that same extraordinary number of people climbing through the same really annoying and challenging rocky climb going up the nearby Cross Mountain. Never have I seen such fervor, so many rosaries being prayed, such good and generous attitudes by all those in the towns while I was there. Rarely have I had the privilege of sharing deep, faith-filled conversations with those on pilgrimage with me. Am I going back? Well, you know it. I can't wait to return and enter more deeply into the Medjugorje experience and know Our Lady and her Son even better. Physically being in a place where my feet can step on the mountain of apparition, where I can be in attendance at the vibrant and the thickly attended liturgies, where I can journey with people who share my faith. Well, why wouldn't I go? Seeing the beauty of the prayer, the fasting, the rosaries, the masses that change lives after the pilgrimages, I'm reminded of Jesus' words in the Gospel of Matthew, where he cautions us against false prophets. If there is doubt about the value of Medjugorje, we need to take heed of Jesus' words. He said, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but underneath are ravenous wolves. By their fruits you will know them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes or figs from thistles? Just so every good tree bears good fruit, and a rotten tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a rotten tree bear good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire, so by their fruits you will know them." Medjugorje provides an abundant harvest of good fruit. That's what I saw, and that is what I personally continue to experience, and I want more. I'm going back. Maybe come with me. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.